This podcast is brought to you by PwC.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Data Ascent, a technology and data podcast presented by PwC Switzerland. I am your host, Matthew Dunn, and on today's episode, we are diving deep into the world of enterprise data migration and exploring why it's crucial for businesses to get it right. Whether you're looking to scale, innovate, or ensure compliance, data migration is a key piece of the puzzle. And I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, Pramukhee Sirsi. Pram is a manager in our technology and data practice up here at PwC Switzerland, and she has over 13 years of experience across 4 countries. Pram is specialized in projects across the data analytics space, and recently she's been focusing on data migration at some of PwC Switzerland's largest clients. Pram, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matthew. Excited to be here. And just to add a personal angle on the migration, in those 4 countries that you mentioned, I've actually moved 14 houses.
Wow.
That doesn't necessarily make me a great person in data migration, but migration for sure.
Let's see how that analogy carries over. I'm curious. So let's start at a high level. What is data migration and why is it so critical for businesses to get right?
Thanks. So from personal migration to data migration, let me set the stage, right? So what is data migration and why is data migration required? It's required because, companies move houses too. And this can be for several reasons. They're moving either because they're changing a vendor, they're moving applications, upgrading to a new platform, many different reasons. But whatever the reason, they do need to still build on the data that they've already built. There's no reason why they should lose the value from the data that they've built. So they migrate data from one place to another. And that, in a nutshell, is what data migration is. It is a necessary step for you to upgrade to a new platform, new application, build better systems within the company.
Interesting. So it's kind of is like moving houses. You can move data from one place to another, and you can also move houses and move all your stuff from one flat to another.
That which brings me to the different models as well, right? So there's a big bang sort of migration that companies can do, or they can do something called a trickle data migration.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I'm much more of the big bang all at once. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and get the moving done. Or in this case, data migration. I guess specifically within those 2 methods, are there certain challenges or hurdles that you and the team have to go through to get a successful data migration project?
Right. Like moving houses, data migration also comes with challenges. To set the stage, however, so there are 3 stages of data migration at a very 30,000-foot view. Mm-hmm. There is the planning of the migration. There is the data migration itself. That's the second stage. And the third stage is the post-data migration analysis. And I don't mean to pick sides, but the most important is the planning stage. As the saying goes, planning without action is futile, but action without planning is fatal. So in this planning stage, there's a couple of areas that I can highlight that are typically a challenge. Companies choose pilots, right? But choosing the pilot itself can be one of the challenges. So I would recommendation based on the experiences we've had, the projects that we have done, choosing the right pilot becomes very important. And the pilot that you choose, or the pilots that you choose, need to be representative of the complexity of data that is being migrated. So that would be a challenge that you need to get right, to get the planning right. Another potential area is to consider the complexity of the migration itself. And complexity can take many forms. It could be that your legacy system doesn't have enough documentation. That is one planning area or complexity that you need to consider. It can be the project-based as well. You have multiple time zones, you have multiple stakeholders, and you need to sort of form your migration right in between, and there's Goldilocks zone that you need to cater to. So these are the complexities that can come through, and planning for them can be a challenge for you to not overrun your budget, for you to plan resources properly and ensure your migration objectives are met.
So it sounds like kind of like in moving houses, some things will get lost, some things might get broken, a box might not be packed correctly. I mean, there are a lot of challenges within a data migration project. And specifically, you mentioned planning. Outside of planning, what other best practices are there within these engagements to help ensure successful data migration?
A lot of best practices there, right? So apart from the pilot itself, what you'd want to look at is that when you run the pilot, again, I'm coming back to the planning stage, but there are elements within the planning stage that you want to do. You want to ensure that your testing is set up. That is one other challenge that you can look at, which says, hey, how do I test my data to ensure the planning objectives are met? Another challenge would be the data mapping itself. How do you ensure the data structures are captured properly and you're not losing granularity in your data? This is something that we saw in one of the projects that we did do in a pharma sector, which is heavily reliant on that granularity of data. And because they did not plan for it, they essentially had to redo some of the phases to ensure that granularity requirement was met.
So whether it's packing the moving truck or a data migration project, I'm calling you, Pram. Thanks for volunteering your services. I really appreciate that. I guess wrapping things up and thinking about the future a bit, how are today's innovations going to affect data migration projects going forward? Things like Gen AI. What do you see that playing a space in these types of engagements?
That's a really good point. So in the introduction, we mentioned that this is a necessary step. But just because it's necessary doesn't mean you can't be efficient at it or you cannot bring in productivity improvements in it. Now that becomes important because if you think of it, there was a point in time when 40% of the data migrations were over budget. And if you think that digitization initiatives in 2027 are going to be worth $4 trillion, that is quite a big amount that you can, improve on, bring efficiencies in. And two ways that you can do that in data migration is actually bring in automation or introduce Gen AI to do this. So an example of that would be automate your testing. Or use Gen AI and the semantic layer in your data to do some of that mapping properly. If you look at the Pareto principle, getting 80% right, you can use the mapping to do most of that work, the semantic layer to do most of that work, and then you reduce the amount of manual effort that needs to be put in. Makes data migration a little more predictable, a little more consistent, so that you have the results that you want from your migration.
So it sounds like Gen AI, these things are only going to be a catalyst for data migration, hoping to make your life a little bit easier at times.
That's a great way to put it.
So specifically within PwC, what is to come within the data migration space at our firm?
Well, I have a personal interest in this, right? There is a series on data migration blog posts that's currently out there. So you can definitely look up PwC to understand what are the typical pitfalls in data migration that you need to look out for, or how to leverage automation for data migration. An upcoming blog post will also talk about AI in data migration. So these are resources that you can look up specific to PwC. But there's a whole host of information out there. We live in a data world. So go on the internet, and there's a lot of tools out there that can also help you with the data migration.
All right, so more to come. Well, thanks, Pram. We really appreciate you joining today. And thanks, everyone, for joining today and listening to our discussion on the ins and outs of data migration. As we heard from Pram, data migration is a cornerstone of enterprises across any sector. Just because your business has to do it doesn't mean it should be inefficient. Organizations are prioritizing these projects to help their businesses succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to dive deeper, feel free to visit our website in the bio of this episode. There you'll find more resources and a link to one of our blogs on how to navigate a successful data migration, published by Pram and the team. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated on all of our latest content. And we do love hearing from you, so please feel free to leave a review or reach out through the website with your feedback and questions. We're here to start any conversations you might have and answer any questions. Join us for the next time on another insightful episode where we'll be exploring the topic of enterprise social governance, ESG, with one of our experts here at PwC. Until then, I'm Matthew Dunn, and on behalf of the entire PwC Switzerland technology and data team, we thank you for listening. Bye-bye.